I don't know. I don't know what the introduction stuff is. I have no idea. Yeah, welcome in everybody. Welcome into the first Friday AMA of September and the first Friday AMA of the official 2024 regular NFL regular season fantasy football season. We have actual football. You guys set your lineups earlier this week. We watched a great game last night. Fantasy points were scored. We got another game tonight, more games Sunday, more games on Monday, and then that'll be week one. Then we got 17 more of those to go, and we are through 2024 already. But so good to be back. So good to be back, guys. What is going on? Welcome into the show. Of course, if you've never been here before, this is just an AMA, pretty casual AMA. I will run through, I want to say all of the questions, or at least as many of the questions as I possibly can. And we can just talk through whatever. In terms of start sit questions, if you, I will take start sit questions, obviously, and try and give you guys advice and help on what I would do for there. I will openly admit at the very beginning that I don't feel like a start sit decisions are my strongest quality as in terms of advice that I can give. But I do have John Paulson's rankings pulled up for those two, to give you kind of what he's looking at. He's diving into the weekly projection lines and has everything going for that. And he's a very, very accurate ranker on a seasonal basis and a weekly basis as well. All of his rankings are available over at 444.com. Use promo code YouTube for 25% off. But I have his rankings pulled up to give you basically, here's what my gut feeling was on start sits. Here's his feeling on start sits, and we can hopefully go from there. But yeah, so that's just my little intro PSA for everybody out there in terms of start sit decisions. But that I don't think there's anything else to talk about. I don't think that was it. So let's just get right into the questions. Let's just do it. We'll run down because I'm sure that everybody's got a lot of questions. Mr. Mole, what's up, my man? Hey, Addison, when would be the best time to sell elite running backs like Brees, Gibbs, and Bijan Robinson? Want to get a max return, but I fear of selling too early. So great question. Running backs obviously are a hot commodity in Dynasty and just fantasy in general. Very pivotal part of winning a championship. But because of their career paths and arcs and shelf lives and increased probability of injury, it's a rougher position to trust and value on a year-to-year basis in Dynasty, just because of all that kind of stuff. But if you are going to be in on anybody, these are the top three guys for sure. At least right now, these are the top three players. You want guys that are on their rookie contracts, producing at an elite level, and workhorses, So I think that if you have these guys on your team, unless you are in a rebuild or even a retool and your value structure is kind of off to where you're more invested into the running back position than you are the wide receiver position, then I'm keeping and holding on to these guys until really they just kind of start aging out. A lot of people in Dynasty really want to sell around 25, 26 years old. They kind of put an age limit on it. Some people put it as a end of rookie contract / when they get their fifth year or their franchise tagged for that, like year 5 or year 6, that's kind of a good time to sell. Generally, that lines up with age 25 or 26 if they came in at 21 years old. And I generally follow in that because there's definitely a value arc to where there is a peak value for these running backs, probably in year 2 or year 3. And then it starts going downhill from there. So if you want like maximum return, that's probably where you're at. Like Brees Hall might be maximum return right now in terms of his overall career, might be the highest that he's ever at. But that's not to say that he isn't valuable for you a year from now, 2 years from now, even though his value overall might be lower than where it is today. That's still not to say that, he just because he's RB2 in Dynasty, he might be RB6 in Dynasty in a year or two, just because of age or anything like that. And that doesn't mean that he lost value, so to speak. It just means that He's getting a little bit older. We prefer some of the younger guys coming in. Maybe some of this 2025 class ends up doing well. Um, so like I don't want to put like a general when is the best time to sell. It's definitely a case by case basis. But if you're competing and you have these guys, I see no reason why you should want to sell. Outside of just you are able to go and move Brees for CD Lamb or Justin Jefferson and move over to the wide receiver position at a comparably productive player at a different position, a more valuable position for Dynasty. But there really isn't like a quote unquote best time other than maybe year 2, year 3 in terms of max value. But again, that's not to say that just because a player will never be valued higher than he is right now, it's not to say that he's still not going to be super valuable moving forward from that, especially if the production is there, like Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley, all those kind of guys. Not sure if that was a really good answer for that, but I just kept kind of going. So, all right, Mike traded Javonte Williams, Josh Palmer, Devin Singletary, and a 4th rounder for Xavier Legette and Kamani Vidal, J.K. Dobbins, and a 2nd round likely early pick. I think the value is fine with Legette in the 2nd. I feel like just from a production standpoint, I would rather have Javonte and Josh Palmer and Devin Singletary. Like, I just feel like that whole package is way more valuable from a production standpoint for 2024 than the upside shots on Legette. And I don't really know what Vidal and J.K. Dobbins are going to be. The 2nd is nice, but I would take Javonte over Xavier Legette. Devin Singletary in a 2nd kind of makes sense. And then I would take Palmer over both running backs. So I just like 1 for 1. I feel like I'd rather just have the side that you gave up. Sorry. But I'm huge on Javonte Williams. I really like Josh Palmer, and I think Singletary is decent. I think Devin Singletary this year is what people want Zamir White to be this year. Tim, Brian Robinson or Keenan Allen in my 2nd flex spot this week. 4 for 4 is saying Robinson by 0.2 of a point. Yeah, so I'd probably start Keenan Allen. B-Rob is nice, but I'm like really scared of the Tampa Bay defense for this. And I don't know if B-Rob just immediately, I think by the end of the year, I'm very high on Brian Robinson seasonally, because I think by the end of the year that he is going to be the main RB1 workhorse in this backfield, and Austin Eckler is taking over the Antonio Gibson role. But I do think that Eckler immediately could cut into that, and then it's just like as the season goes on, B-Rob continues to outproduce and outshine Eckler because of, he's younger, he's more explosive, he's more complete of a running back. I think that happens, and they diverge more over the course of the year. I don't know if that happens this week. And like I said, against a really good Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, or at least it was good last year against the run. I'm a little scared of that at this point. So I think I would lean Keenan Allen against the Titans and go from there. Now it could depend on, because Keenan was nursing some sort of injury. So obviously if he's out or at all seems limited, then I would probably trust in the volume of B-Rob at that point. But I think as of right now, I would start Keenan Allen this week. Josh asked you about if trading Addison for Achane in a 2nd was a good deal a couple weeks ago. Offered Addison straight up, and the dude accepted. Well, I mean, hey, you got your 2nd round pick back. That's fantastic. That's such an easy accept. Go and trade Addison for Achane. Everybody, go do that, especially before this week, because I think Achane has a chance to explode. Tally ho, we got football back. Yes, we do. Any bold takes for the game tonight? Good question. I was talking through some stuff with my friend about because we were just talking about like sports betting and stuff, because we hit on basically I hit on all my bets minus my big touchdown like parlay that I just threw out in the trade show yesterday of like 7 guys that were going to score. I put like $1 on that, but all my main bets, I hit on all those. So we're trying again tonight. So we'll see what happens. Josh Jacobs is probably going to score. Saquon Barkley is probably going to score. I think Christian Watson ends up showing that he is the fantasy wide receiver 1 for the Packers tonight, and will be the fantasy wide receiver 1 for the Packers seasonally as long as he stays healthy. I think that we find that out tonight from Christian Watson, and that he asserts himself as the team's wide receiver one over Jaden Reed. Maybe that counts as a hot take. Burner's burner. Dynasty Superflex 12 team half PPR. Daniels, T. Higgins, and Roman Wilson, or Jamar Chase. I will take Jaden Daniels and T. Higgins in this one. I don't really care about Roman Wilson. He's a nice plus, but in a Superflex league, I will take Daniels and T. Higgins for this one. It's pretty close though, but I'm a big time believer in Jaden Daniels. I think T. Higgins has a nice bounce back year, so give me the quarterback in a Superflex league versus a side that does not have the quarterback. Hi, Addison. Sit Addison or Odunze this week. Oh, see, these are why I hate start sit decisions, because I don't like making these types of decisions. My gut is telling me just to go with Jordan Addison because of the Giants defense. He is the clear wide receiver 2 and second target on the team, even if it is for Sam Darnold. But I don't know what Odunze's opportunity is going to look like initially. 4 for 4. John Paulson in a PPR league has Odunze as wide receiver 47, projected 10.8, and Addison is projected wide receiver 52 at 10.3. So a half a point difference between the two. So it really is that much of a toss-up. I think I go with Jordan Addison and just hope for the big play, but I would not fault you for wanting to play Odunze anyway. I mean, their numbers are basically identical. The difference between the two, Paulson has them both projected with 3.5 receptions, but Addison has 45 yards and Odunze has 52. So that's where like the difference in projections comes from. He does have Addison have a slightly better touchdown percentage or touchdown likelihood. So there is that. I think I would start Jordan Addison. I don't like either one of these guys for this week. So if you have a potentially different option, I feel like I might do that, but I think I would just probably hope and pray with Addison as the clear-cut second option. DD, hey Addison, happy Friday. Happy Friday to you, my man. I have Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely in one league and Njoku and Likely in another. How do you feel about starting Isaiah Likely? All right, we are in it. We are in here from last night. Eli's in here. Isaiah Likely, is he real or a mirage? Let's see if anybody else has it. We're at the Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews conversation now. More specifically to talk about Isaiah Likely, yes, I do think that he is real. I think that he is very startable moving forward. The benefit that the Ravens have with Isaiah Likely right now is that they can operate almost exclusively out of 12 personnel and have both Andrews and Likely in the field at the same time. And that formation allows them to have their optimal lineup to run the ball or to throw the ball, because I would much rather, as Todd Monken and the offensive coordinator and like the offensive game planning for the Ravens, I feel like I would rather have Isaiah Likely out there than Nelson Aguilar. That's so you would have Zay and Bateman, Andrews and Likely, Henry or Justice Hill. That's your offense. And Lamar is just going to be the super weapon to be able to distribute the ball anywhere that he needs to, or run it himself. So I think that Isaiah Likely is very real. I don't think that he's going to do 8 for 100 and a touchdown every single week, and potentially it could have been 2 touchdowns. I think that his production was inflated last night by scheme and by defensive scheme and overall game plan, that it just fed more towards Isaiah Likely because the Chiefs defense was so much more focused on Mark Andrews. So the game plan for the Ravens just kind of flew over to Isaiah Likely, and it kind of went over to Justice Hill as well on dump off passes, and Lamar obviously running for like 130 yards or whatever. There is a spider. Hold on, gotta kill a spider. That spider just dropped down from the ceiling on a web. Gross. Anyway, sorry. So I do think that Isaiah Likely is startable. I don't know if I would immediately overreact to it and say that I would plug him in over Njoku or over Andrews again in week 2. I might give it one more week just to see what happens with Andrews versus Likely. and Likely versus another guy that you have already felt like is deemed every week kind of starter, like a David Njoku, like an Evan Ingram, like a Jake Ferguson or a George Kittle. That's that kind of range of tight ends I could see Likely already being into. And now you're gonna have to make decisions because you didn't really think that you were gonna have to make these decisions with Likely. You thought that he was just a good handcuff. But we're here now. But I don't think I would immediately throw Likely into my lineup next week if you already have one of those other guys. Because I want to see it happen again and just see if because this could be like a really annoying um like the Andrews and Likely kind of cannibalize each other and they both it's one of them's weeks and it's the other one. It might be really annoying to predict whose week it is. They do play at home against Vegas next week. I could see that just being a Derrick Henry game and just running down the throats of Vegas, especially with they're probably going to end up winning that game by 7 or 10 plus points. So T. Higgins has a little hamstring tweak, and we'll see how it goes. Nice. Also says we'll see on Jamar Chase. Excellent. That's great. That's what you want to hear. Bengals are on upset alert, apparently. Anyway, but yeah, that's kind of how I feel about Isaiah Likely. Now on the Mark Andrews side, I'm not concerned yet. I am hoping, I'm hoping that he was playing through a little bit of an injury, so maybe he wasn't as explosive. Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers put out an excellent tweet that he said that he went back and watched the film, and the Chiefs defense purposely bracketed, doubled, and triple teamed Mark Andrews last night. He wasn't open, and it wasn't like he wasn't open because he couldn't get open. It was that they had linebackers covering in on him. They had safety help from the top when he was in the slot. Like he was not able to get open because they had so many people on him already. So I'm not necessarily worried about Mark Andrews as of right now. And I think things will get better as the season moves on. So that's kind of my breakdown for both of these guys. That Andy breakdown was great. Yeah. That's what my confidence came. I was already on I'm not panicking on Mark Andrews. And then I saw Andy's tweet about that and it was fantastic. Steven with the $2 Canadian super chat. Thank you so much, Steven. One quarterback, start 8. Who would you flex out of Najee, Addison, or Gus? I would be playing Najee Harris just strictly out of greater confidence for his role in the offense, the opportunities that he'll get in terms of like total touch share. And not that he has like the greatest matchup against the Falcons defense. It's fine. But I don't trust Jordan Addison. I really do not want. I would love to not play Jordan Addison this week. And Gus Edwards, I think that he's the RB1, but I'm not necessarily sure. I trust Najee Harris more in terms of touch share than I do Gus Edwards. And I just looked and Paulson agrees with that as well. He's got Najee ranked 8 spots higher than Gus Edwards with almost a 3.5 point. Nope, bad math. 2.5 point, almost a 3 point difference in projection between Najee and Gus Edwards. So I would go Najee Harris for that. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you. And again, for anybody, I'm not asking for super chats, but if you do throw a super chat in there, we immediately go right to it. So, but I'm not asking for super chats anyway. Joe, any concerns about Pitts? None whatsoever. He was a full participant yesterday, expected to be a full participant today. I have no concerns as of right now about Kyle Pitts or any of his hamstring kind of issues. He's actually still in my DraftKings lineup. He has been in my DraftKings lineup since like the beginning of August, and I have not moved him from that spot whatsoever. So I have no concern about Kyle Pitts this week. Speaking of Kyle Pitts, Gavin traded Pitts and Troy Franklin for Kelsey Sinnott and a third. I don't mind it overall. I feel like I would still take Kyle Pitts. Obviously I'll take Sinnott over Troy Franklin, but I would take Pitts over Kelsey in a third. Not to say that I'm worried about what happened last night. He had like 3 receptions for 30 yards or something. It's fine. And I'm not calling for the downfall of Travis Kelce either based on last night, but I just feel like if I am such a believer in Kyle Pitts this year that even if he doesn't get to my expectations, if he just looks solid and is a top 10, top 8 fantasy tight end at his age with Kirk Cousins in there now, he's I think that he is going to be valued higher than Travis Kelce, even more than he already is probably right now, give or take, because of production and if people are starting to look at contending for 2024. But I think I would still take the Kyle Pitts side. It's not a bad deal, but I believe so much in Kyle Pitts. I probably would have kept that side, but it's not bad. Wilson, pick 3 in a non PPR league: Harrison, Neighbors, London, or Waddle. I feel like just out of again, week 1, the name of the game for week 1 for me for these start sit decisions is going to come down to confidence. Just overall, how confident am I in their role or their opportunity for this week? Just I don't want to get cute. I don't want to fall too much in love with players that we talked about and we're in love with all off season for their careers or anything like that. I'm just looking at my confidence for this week as just a normal week. So with that being said, the 3 guys that I would go with would be Marvin, Drake London, and Jalen Waddle. I would skip over Malik Neighbors for now because I want to see what that offense looks like. And they have a really good matchup against the Vikings defense. And that's really enticing. But I feel like Waddle and Harrison are locked into the roles that they have. Waddle apparently has been looking good from his injuries. So I think that I'm feeling pretty good about them. And then I would play Drake London against the Steelers defense. Paulson has London and Neighbors back-to-back as wide receiver 19 and 20. They're both projected the same amount of points. Neighbors gets maybe a slight bump because he does play the Vikings defense, which is better than the Steelers defense against wide receivers. But he does have Marv and Waddle as the 2 highest guys. So I feel like those 2 are locked. The decision is between Neighbors and London. I slightly lean towards Drake London. Better quarterback, better offense. They are. I just think that London is set up better for week 1 than Malik Neighbors is right now. So I would play Drake London, but it's close. Strong contender with Puka. Do you trade away 80 Mitchell and Dobbs for Cooper Kupp? I would do that even as a rebuilder and then flip Cooper Kupp for more. So I am so easily taking Cooper Kupp in this. It's not even funny how fast I would hit except for that to get Cooper Kupp. Full PPR week 1, Mooney or Leggett. I will take Darnell Mooney. Again, I just feel more confident that he's going to have like quality snaps. Like Leggett might be the wide receiver 3 or 4 to start out right now. Mooney is the first sure 2, especially with Rondale's injury. Mooney is the for sure wide receiver 2, maybe the 3 in terms of targets behind Pitts. So I'll start Darnell Mooney. Antonio, what's up, Addy? What's your current value on Justin Fields? If Russ doesn't play this week, should we sell Fields right away or wait for a big game as a starter? I don't really feel all that different about him than I did maybe a month ago whenever the news was like, oh, there is a quarterback competition. We could see Justin Fields this year. If Russ doesn't play, I think that offers a good sell opportunity, but I don't think, again, it comes down to your risk and how willing you are to take on that risk. Because you could bet that Justin Fields looked good and that if Fields play this week, you could make the bet that if he looks good, that he will continue to be the starter. I don't personally think that's the case. I think Russell Wilson is the starter no matter what. But if you believe that Fields could continue to be the starter or gets another shot later on, then you could hold on and try to see that if he performs, and then maybe you can sell for like a first round pick or some sort of a player that will actually help you compete this year. If you're not getting that, then I think it's not really worth it to sell. If you're getting that now, I don't think anybody's going to trade for Justin Fields this week because nobody's hurt, nobody's on bye. And it just, they might just think that, oh, Russell Wilson was hurt, so we got to go. They just had to go to Justin Fields. And as soon as Russ comes back, he will be the starter. So I think that's going to be the main thinking for a lot of people. So I think it's going to be hard to sell Justin Fields. So you probably have to hold on to him unless you are getting something, like I said, like a first round pick or a player that kind of is valued that way. or has more future potential value. Like if you can sell Justin Fields for Jordan Addison, um, who may or may not be worth a first round pick, but has better upside long term, then I would probably do that. If you're not getting something like that, it's probably not worth selling. At least in my mind, it's not really worth selling for Justin Fields at that point. So board 12 team super flex. Two quarterback, two running back, three wide receiver, tight end flex. My other quarterbacks for this year are Minshew and Danny Dimes. Should I move Hurts for more depth, or do I roll with the two high-end quarterbacks? I may be able to get Waddle, a first, and Swift, or maybe Hurts for Chase 1-for-1. Both of those deals, I am taking Jalen Hurts. That is not enough to sell Hurts at all. Your team is some big truck just up my window. Your team, I think, is pretty competitive. I definitely do agree that overall you are weak at wide receiver with the guys that you mentioned, especially compared to the running back position. So this is like what I was kind of talking about at the top. When is the right time to sell, like Brees, Bijan, Gibbs? This is kind of what I was talking about when I think that you're a little overweight on the running back position compared to your wide receiver position. So I might, instead of trading Hurts, and you have Stroud as well, I would probably try to see if I could trade Saquon or ETN for a comparable wide receiver, and then fill in your. I think it's easier to fill in running backs than it is to fill in wide receivers. Um, I also don't know if you're necessary. Like, I think that you're contending, but I don't know if you're an overall like massive contender. If Musgrave is your starting quarterback or starting tight end, I like Monty in the flex. Don't love Ladd as your wide receiver 3. I just don't think the two ideas that you had for Hurts. I would take Hurts over Chase 1-for-1, and I would take Hurts over Waddle and a first, um, or Waddle a first and DeAndre Swift. I would take Hurts over all of that. So it needs to be like a massive. It really needs to be like a haul for me to trade off of Hurts, and maybe Hurts isn't the right one to do it with. Maybe Stroud is the right one to do it with. Straight trade down from Stroud down to Kyler plus or Dak plus or something like that. That might be a better because it all depends on your league too. Like I'm not opposed to putting up one of your quarterbacks for sell, and I would sell whichever one gets you the most. But you got to make sure that you get the value for it. And I don't think either one of those is right value for either quarterback. I would take both quarterbacks over Chase and both quarterbacks over Waddle, a first, and Swift. Um, I like the idea and I like the thinking of trying to upgrade your wide receiver position. I just don't know if the quarterback position, if you mortgaging your quarterback position is the right move for that. Also, don't know, or also might consider wanting to do it with your running backs instead of your wide receivers. Jamie, what's up, my man? Football is finally back. We love to see it. Tally ho, thoughts on Rice and Worthy after last night's game for their value in Dynasty? What do you think happens for the Chiefs offense when Hollywood comes back? Rashee Rice is a top 15 Dynasty wide receiver. He might even be top 12. He might not be top 12 right now after week 1. That might be an overreaction, but I think he's a top 15 Dynasty wide receiver. And by the end of the year, he will probably be a top 12, top 10 Dynasty wide receiver. Rashee Rice. Worthy, I think, is going to be a top 20, top 18 kind of a guy. I could see him bumping up to where Odunze kind of is now, or like in the Pittman, Tank Dell, Debo Samuel kind of range of a DK or T Higgins kind of range of like a mid to back end wide receiver too. I think Hollywood's presence is going to hurt Worthy a little bit more than he will Rice, because I think Rice is just the one. I think there's nothing that is going to inhibit Rashee Rice from not being the one in this offense. I just think that he's that dude. Worthy, I feel like we might overreact a little bit to Xavier Worthy because he scored on an end around and then he scored on like a broken 40 yard touchdown play. And he didn't really have like his target share was not fantastic last night. He just happened to score twice because that's just the type of player that he is, which we knew coming into this that he had that upside. But I mean, he had 3 targets, caught 2 of them. And like I said, one of them was for that long touchdown. And why'd I get a spam thing on here? And he just scored twice. So like his fantasy performance looks fantastic, but he had 3 targets, 2 for 47. and just scored twice. So I think Hollywood cuts into Xavier Worthy a lot more than Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice for me, I think that he is fantastic, and I had this feeling coming into last night that I was like, Rashee Rice is going to come out and he's just going to remind everybody that he has been the biggest value all off season at the wide receiver position because we were worried about the suspension, but he is just so phenomenally good, and he is the wide receiver one that um, that I think that he is like the Amon-Ra St. Brown of this offense, and he's going to be fantastic. So I think he's a top 15 dynasty wide receiver, and I think that it was a misvalue all off season for sure. And I think that he could be top 12, top 10 by the end of the year, if not even like by the end of the month or the end of October, halfway through the year. I'm very high on Rashee Rice. Jerome Ford or Joe Mixon this week? I will start Joe Mixon. I don't love Ford against the Cowboys defense. So I'll start Joe Mixon this week. Connor, fresh off Superflex 10-team startup, have Stafford, Levis, May, Steelers quarterbacks, but I have a crazy wide receiver room of Jefferson, Harrison, Neighbors, Ayuk. Holy crap. Should I try to flip receivers for QB now or wait? Good question. I think you could wait. I think that this is a team that and I've seen plenty of examples of this where teams are just so good that it doesn't matter who their quarterbacks are necessarily for Superflex. You still obviously have to have solid producing quarterbacks, but in a Superflex league, you don't need, like Hurts and Stroud necessarily. You don't need Lamar and Joe Burrow. You don't need two top guys. You can survive and win very effectively with two people in this like Stafford, Levis, Russell Wilson kind of range, especially if your wide receivers are as good as what they are now. So I would not be in a rush to try to flip any of your receivers for a quarterback. If you can trade Neighbors for like Kyler, then sure, then I would do that. Or trade Harrison for Lamar Jackson, then sure, I would do that. But I wouldn't be like actively trying to make that move, and it might take a very specific team in your league anyway to do that. One of them that did prioritize two quarterbacks and then doesn't necessarily have the greatest of wide receiver rooms, or maybe they're looking for that alpha. So there might be only like one or two teams in your league that even like works for. But as of where you are right now, I would not actively be looking to make that move, because I think that you can survive, and I think that you'd be very productive this year as a contending team with these wide receivers. So, are you starting Yoshivas if T. Higgins is out? I'd be pretty tempted to. I've been looking at him as a free square for DraftKings, but I'd be pretty tempted to start him. I think it also, like, he becomes very, very startable if both Higgins and Chase somehow sit out, or if Chase is at all like limited because he's missed so much time. But I think, I feel like there's a pretty solid opportunity for Yoshivas if Higgins is out to start this week. I mean, against the Patriots defense, and I think it would depend on who else you have. Like, I feel like your roster, like, you don't, if you have Yoshivas as like your wide receiver 3 or 4, your roster's in trouble already just from that. So because it's week 1, it might be rough to play him over anybody else that you have at wide receiver or at running back in the flex. Just because there are, like I said, there's no injuries, there's no bye weeks really. Well, I guess there is an injury with T. Higgins out, but for the most part, there's really no injuries. There's no bye weeks. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's active. So I feel like it might be difficult to find a situation where I would actually play Yoshivas over a lot of other wide receivers that you probably have, but I would be tempted. I would be willing to look at it and see what goes on. Trig, 1 second. Gotta hydrate. Lots of questions. Lots of stuff to go to. All right. 12-team 1 quarterback. I feel like I have 9 RB2s. It seems so. Keep the depth or self depth for picks. Can't seem to trade into studs you want with all my players. Maybe if I can get picks, I have a better chance of buying studs. So I think there is something to be said with that. That not everybody wants your players. Not everybody wants Chase Brown. Not everybody wants Devin Singletary. Not everybody wants Rico Dowdle. But most everybody would take a second round pick, because that second round pick could be anything. It could even be Rico Dowdle, Family Guy reference. But that's everybody wants a pick, especially because that pick can't get hurt. It's probably going to gain a little bit of value. It doesn't take up a roster spot. It just inherently holds a little bit more uh, value in it for everybody than some of these players, especially because some of these players really only fit maybe 3, 4, 5 teams in your league anyway as a contenders. So you've already narrowed down your trading partners just by having these players versus the picks. So that's kind of like the theory behind, why it might make sense to trade some of these guys for picks if you can, and then use picks to help upgrade into the stud players that you actually want rather than upgrading with these kind of guys. So I do agree with that. I like that thinking. Um, I don't necessarily think that I would. I mean, I don't know what the rest of your roster looks like. I don't know. Are you competing or not? Um, that's a good point, BC. uh, Rico was not. He was just the first name that my eyes locked onto for that reference. It could even be Rico. It could even be Zach Charbonnet. That second round pick. Um, But yeah, so Trig, I don't necessarily know what direction your team is heading in if you're competing. I'd imagine it looks like you probably are competing if you have Pacheco, Mixon, both Browns guys, and you have all these other backup RBs. To where I like having that amount of guys for a contending roster because it gives you options on a weekly basis and it gives you insurance on any of your guys getting hurt, or the ability to flip one of those guys to another team that their starting running back got hurt. So if they have Kenneth Walker and you can flip Zach Charbonnet for a lot more than when Walker was normally healthy, that's just more upside and long term value for you over the year to year. But if you're not contending, then I would be actively trying to sell probably all of these guys. But my belief is that you are contending. So I don't know if you would necessarily need to sell all of them. I'd probably like to roster all these guys anyway, just to see what happens. Especially now, see what happens with McLaughlin, see what happens with Chase Brown, see what happens with Rico Dowdle. Because the opportunity costs on selling them for maybe a second right now um, and if they end up not really being all that much, you can still sell them for a third. Like I feel like that opportunity cost is worth it for the possibility that hey, maybe Rico Dowdle is the RB1 in Dallas and is a top 24 running back that maybe you're not selling for a first, but you're selling for a lot more than just one random second. Same with McLaughlin if he shows out and does well. Same with Chase Brown if he ends up being the starter, or if Zach Moss gets hurt at all. Same with Singletary. It might make more sense to hold on to these guys into the season a little bit just to see what happens than sell immediately right now, especially if you are contending. Could even be a boat. I love it. Sorry, I'm trying to give everybody this is the struggle of doing this AMA because there's a lot of people in here that are all asking questions, and I know you want all of your questions answered for sure. So I'm going to go through as many. I'm going to try and go through all of them, or at least as many as I possibly can. But I'm trying to give everybody the same amount of time, and like I want to make sure that I'm giving the best advice, spend the right amount of time with everybody. So I do apologize if I'm not quickly getting to your answer. Powerful, tight end premium, full extra point, Tank Dell or Jake Ferguson in the flex. In an extra full point PPR for tight end, I'm pretty tempted to take Jake Ferguson. So if you think about, like, if you look at the projection for, here, let's just take a look at it real quick. In a full PPR league, Paulson has Tank Dell projected for 12 fantasy points. So that is 4 receptions for 50 yards and a 50-50 shot on a touchdown. So that's where that's coming from. So 4 for 50, essentially. Jake Ferguson, on the other hand, he has him projected for 4 for 44. So if they both meet that, Ferguson is going to outscore Tank Dell by about 3, 4, 5 points just from that because of the extra point per reception. And obviously, if Tank Dell scores, then that's going to be a whole different thing. But if Jake Ferguson scores, that could be a whole different thing too. I'm pretty tempted to start Jake Ferguson just because of the whole extra point and just kind of not really just see what happens with the Texans offense this week. I'm also on board with that. I do think that it could be kind of a shootout because it's a matchup against an individual matchup against the Colts. It could be a shootout, but I feel like if you just want to remove yourself from the ambiguity of the Texans wide receiver room, and you start Jake Ferguson with an extra full point per PPR, and they both have like 4 or 5 receptions, Maybe Taylor is going to have a few extra yards, but that whole extra point per reception, I think, is a little bit more meaningful. I'm pretty tempted to start Jake Ferguson in this one. Jamie does a start shit show every morning at going for 2, starting at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Make sure to check out Jamie. I think I see you on Facebook doing that, actually, now that you mention that. Let's see. Is it too early to go into panic mode with Andrews just drafted him on Dynasty startup as a tight end 1? No, it's not too early. Andrews also stayed in and blocked something like 30% of the game too. Once the O-line gels, Andrews will be fine. That's another point of that as well, is that the offensive line for the Ravens looked like garbage last night. That Andrews breakdown makes me feel a lot better. For the people that don't know, Andy Holloway from the Fantasy Footballers posted a little like mini Twitter thread on a breakdown of what he saw from Mark Andrews' film from last night. The TLDR is that the Chiefs defense like actively worked to make sure that he was not a factor in the game. And they doubled and triple teamed him a lot, especially towards the end as the Ravens were trying to drive and score to tie the game. They took out Mark Andrews, and they wanted Lamar to run the ball that was going to chew up clock or throw it to the 5'9" Zay Flowers, or Isaiah Likely is there, which likely got the target and the potential touchdown, but they purposely took Mark Andrews out of the game for that. My girlfriend wants to know, start Deshaun Watson or Daniel Jones in the Superflex. I'd rather her be mad at you than me if you're wrong. I would start Deshaun Watson. Daniel Jones is tempting against the Vikings defense, but I would start Deshaun Watson because I think like Neighbors is the best wide receiver of both teams as a whole, but Watson has the better offense, the better weapons collectively with Amari, Judy, and Elijah Moore, Jerome Ford out of the backfield, David Njoku. I trust Deshaun Watson a little bit more for the weapons that he has and the offense that he's in with his coaching staff than I do Daniel Jones. So I'll start Deshaun Watson. If I'm wrong, your girlfriend can be mad at me. Theo, Dynasty Superflex, 12 by 10. I traded Trevor, Rice, and Whittington for Hurts last week. Is this still a W? It's a little less of a W after Rashee Rice, but no, I think it's still a win. Trevor would need to have like the breakout. I'm hoping that Trevor breaks out this year, but he would need to have that kind of breakout season to go back into being a top 10 dynasty wide receiver for this to really not make it a W. But I think having Jalen Hurts is still a win on this side for now. We'll see what Trevor does, or if Rice continues to be absolutely insane. Robert was trying to trade for Flowers before last night's game, but couldn't get a deal done. Do you think his value went up, or it feels like he's going to get a huge target share? See, so that was my issue with Zay Flowers coming into this. So somebody already victory lapped me on the 4for4 YouTube channel because I made a video talking through the worst draft picks in a redraft draft at each round. And I highlighted Zay Flowers as the worst pick in the 5th round. And the reasoning behind that was I said that he's not really set up to have a ceiling in this offense. And I'm sure he's going to have a massive target share. He had a massive target share already last year. And he had one last night with 10 targets, but that was 6 receptions for 37 yards. His ADOT was horrible. Like, people want to talk about like Rashee Rice being slant boy and his ADOT being low. Like, Zay Flowers is just as bad, if not worse. So that's kind of like Flowers, I don't think is set up to have all that much of a fantasy ceiling in the Ravens offense. He might be, like Dolphins Jarvis Landry at best. He might be Golden Tate. That's kind of where he is from like a fantasy football perspective. He's great. He's a fantastic NFL wide receiver, and he's definitely deserving of having 8 to 10 plus targets a week. And that's going to be crazy over the course of the entire year. But I just don't really see a ceiling when his usage is so short field around the line of scrimmage, not like gadgety, but it's just like, how can we get him the ball in open space quickly to make him work his magic as a yak machine tackle breaker and get him to get some quick yards for us as an extension of the run game almost. That was my fear with Zay Flowers. And the guy was just like, oh, what an idiot for saying that Zay Flowers was the worst pick in the 5th round. Like, you were so excited that you got nine fantasy points from him last night. when I was like, yeah, you could have gotten, the upside of George Pickens or the upside of T. Higgins in the 5th round, whatever. That's a whole. But I already got victory lap last night from week 1 on that. So I think that Zay Flowers' dynasty value increased because of the targets that he received last night, but I don't know if it necessarily if that increase is valid because I still just don't really see a ceiling. For me, he hasn't changed at all in terms of how I view him for dynasty from before last night to now. Still just the same lower ceiling, PPR only wide receiver that maybe he scores a touchdown every now and again. But I don't see upside with him that I do with a lot of other wide receivers that are in his value range. Dynasty 14 team start 8. I traded Pitts and Higgins for Puka. Did I overpay? No, I think in a start 8, I don't think you did. In a start, I prefer those studs in a start 8. Pitts could end up being a stud. That's kind of like my fear. But I don't think that this was necessarily an overpay for Puka himself in a start 8. So I don't mind it. Oh, Robert, part 2. What would you be looking to give up to get Zay Flowers? I really don't want to pay a first just because I feel like that first could be used for something better. Either add to the first and get a better wide receiver, or use that first to go get, like I said, go get George Pickens or T. Higgins or DK Metcalf, or take the shot on Romo Dunze being well, or go get Brian Thomas for less. You don't necessarily need to pay a late first, a future first for Brian Thomas yet. That's kind of like my issue. So I don't really want to pay a first to go get Zay Flowers. If I can get him for anything less, then I would be happy with that. I'd pay 2 seconds for him, but I don't think somebody's going to sell him for 2 seconds. So he just feels like a player that I am not going to be able to get because I don't think that I want to pay for the type of player that he is. I would rather, like I said, use that first in a different manner to go upgrade from Zay Flowers or get a different wide receiver that has more upside. That's where I'm at with Zay right now. I panic played Rice last night in 2 leagues because of the Chase drama. Needless to say, that worked out pretty well for me and gives me more flexibility Sunday. Yeah, absolutely. 17 fantasy points. Rashee Rice didn't even score 17 fantasy points. That's like shades of Deontay Johnson from a couple years ago. Whew. Yeah, love it. What do you think the future looks like for Xavier Worthy? Should I try to trade him off of last night's low volume high output, or do you think his role actually grows? I think his role will grow as the season goes on. I think that they were just trying to get him, they're just trying to get him the ball when they can and put him in a position to succeed, especially early on. But I do think that Hollywood is going to hurt him more than Rashee Rice. I just don't know what you would be able to sell him for last night that is significantly more than what you already paid for. Like, I feel like if you're selling him after last night, then you weren't really necessarily a believer in Xavier Worthy anyway. Maybe from a redraft standpoint, I understand it, but I from a dynasty standpoint, if you drafted Xavier Worthy at like the 108, 109, 110 in Superflex, or the 105, 106 in one quarterback, I just don't know what the price increase would be right now for Worthy that would make it worth my while to trade him to then not see what happens in the rest of the year, how his rookie season comes to fruition by the end of 2024. Like, I feel like selling off of rookies early just because of one good performance is not a positive EV process. It's not smart. And I think that you should just let the train ride, because I don't think that any small 10, 15, 20% increase in value right now and ROI that you're getting, I don't know if that's necessarily worth it compared to where he could be at the end of the year if his opportunity grows. Because, that's the type of player that Worthy is. He has that ability to do that. And so I'm not selling because he did it, because that's already what we were thinking that he was going to do anyway. He just happened to score twice on 4 touches, But again, that's the type of player that Worthy is. So Worthy gave me Gabe Davis nightmares. I think he's better than Gabe Davis. And Mahomes, I think, will make him better than Gabe Davis. Andy Reid will make him better than Gabe Davis. It was maybe a more accurate statement. So I'm not selling Xavier Worthy high after last night in Dynasty because I want to see what comes off or what comes out of it, I should say. What would it take to pull you off of Worthy? That's a good question. I would need to be able to enter into a wide receiver tier that was previously unavailable to me with just Xavier Worthy, or by adding a second round pick to Worthy. So if we look at I'm just going to pull up some ADP just to kind of give myself some names. So previously, Worthy was down at wide receiver 27 in August ADP, right around T. Higgins and Deebo Samuel and Tank Dell. If we assume that his value rose and he's now maybe up with ahead of Devontae Adams, up with Pickens and Metcalf, which I still feel is high for Worthy right now. But maybe by adding a second, you can go from Worthy up to Brandon Ayuk, or up to Nico Collins, or up to Jalen Waddle. I want to upgrade from Worthy. I don't really want to side grade. I don't really want to trade for another first. I need to upgrade, and I need to upgrade to a player that was previously unavailable to me before last night. So a la Ayuk, Nico, Waddle. Maybe it's easier to go up and get to Neighbors, easier to go up to get to Garrett Wilson. That's what I want to do with Xavier Worthy right now, as a sell high versus just sell off, I think is a difference. Scott, full PPR tight end, 1.5 premium, choose 2 for flex. Dobbs, Palmer, Myers, BTJ, Pop Douglas, Taysom Hill, or Jatavion Sanders. All right, full PPR tight ends get 1.5. So, well, I don't necessarily care about Jatavion Sanders right now, and I don't really care about Taysom Hill either. I am so tempted to play Brian Thomas Jr. I'm playing Josh Palmer. I think he's for sure one. Let's see what Paulson has to say about this. And before I look at what the rankings are, my gut is telling me to play Dobbs and Palmer. Let's see what Paulson says. So scrolling. So he has BTJ as the highest, projected for 12 fantasy points. He's got Palmer at 11.5. He's got Dobbs at 10.5. Dobbs at 10.5. I didn't see Jacoby Myers is at 10.5 as well. DeMario's at 8.4, and I don't care about Taysom or Sanders. So it's between the 4 wide receivers. So according to Paulson, based on his rankings, he would say BTJ and Palmer, which I am for. I was trying to put my BTJ feelings in check, but Paulson's giving me permission to ride the BTJ train, so I will ride it. BTJ is currently in my DraftKings lineup right now too, so I'm on board with BTJ against Miami. We'll see. I was trying to debate if he would get Jalen Ramsey or not on the outside, or if Gabe Davis would, assuming that Jalen Ramsey plays. But Ramsey just signed a new contract, and I'm sure that he's completely healthy now that he just signed a new contract. But I was trying to decide if he was going to get Ramsey or not, or if they were going to move around. Or so that was a question that I had in my head for maybe why not to play BTJ. But I would play Palmer for sure. And I'll play BTJ. I think if you don't want to go with the rookie in week 1, I think Dobbs is a very fine play tonight. So just make sure that he's not in your flex spot. Cameron, 12 by 11 PPR, 2 tight end premium, flex, Pollard or Muth. I'll play Pollard tonight. Not tonight. Pollard this weekend. I'll play Pollard because I trust his volume more than Muth. It's slightly different than the Ferguson Tank Dell one, where I believe more in Ferguson than I do Muth in week 1. And I'm not comparing that to a running back who has the ability to have 12 to 15 total touches. And if Pollard and Muth, they have the ability to potentially catch the same number of receptions. So Muth would win there, but Pollard would also win because he's getting 12 carries for 60 yards. Maybe he scores. And I like the matchup against Chicago more or less. So I'll play I'll play Pollard in this over Freiermuth. Half PPR trade Jerome Ford and Pickens for T. Higgins or keep Ford and Pickens. I would keep Ford and Pickens. Running back depth is good, but Ford is expendable. I don't think T. Higgins is enough of an upgrade over George Pickens to do this. I would be aiming a little bit higher for. I don't know if this is Dynasty. I would aim higher for sure. I would probably aim for like Michael Pittman at least. Um, Honestly, even in redraft, I need a little bit higher too. Like I'd aim for like Waddle or Nico probably in redraft. Uh, in Dynasty, I don't think you're getting that high. In Dynasty, you're probably going to have to move up to like not Pickens. Sorry, Pittman or Odunze or somebody like that. I just don't think that Higgins is enough of an upgrade over Pickens to lose Jerome Ford. Drop Stafford for Fields as my backup quarterback in 1 QB. We have deep benches. No, I will keep Matthew Stafford. You think I can still win my matchup given the fact that I had Andrews? Yes, I think you can. Without knowing what your matchup looks like, I still think that you can. I had Andrews in a couple leagues last night too, kind of put up a dud for me, but I mean, it's 3 fantasy points. So I feel like you could win with worse from tight ends from that. So I think, this is the matchup. There you go. Keep on reading, Addison. Way to go. So Kyler over Daniels. Oh, sorry, you have Kyler and Daniels. Kyler over Love. Daniels over whoever their other flex is. Pacheco. I think your running backs are still better than Pacheco and Monty, given what Pacheco did last night. Having AJ Brown is going to be iffy. Marvin, I think you can still win. I think you can still win this one. Weiberg, would you rather have Kendra Miller or Keaton Mitchell on your IR? I'd rather have Kendra Miller because I think that Keaton Mitchell was nice, but I think that they like Justice Hill, and he's obviously not going to get any touches over Derrick Henry unless they're just receiving things. But I think that they like Justice Hill more than Keaton Mitchell. So I'd rather have Kendra Miller for the upside there just to see what happens. Talked Saquon last week, which is super helpful, but felt pumped to make this trade. I've been wanting to do to all offseason. Sent Saquon, Devontae Adams in a second for AJ Brown and Zach Moss. Holy crap. This is an excellent way to sell off of age. God, I love this trade so much. To trade away the upside, but also the risk of Saquon Barkley, the age of Devontae Adams, Zach Moss in a second effectively cancel out. So I will so easily take AJ Brown over Barkley and Adams, and the second for Zach Moss is nice as well. Yeah, so now you plug in AJ Brown as your wide receiver 1. You still got Olave, DK, Godwin. Ooh, I really, really like the workings of this one. I like it a lot. Scale of 1 to 10, your team from before. Holy Tyreek. I give this an 8. Overall an 8. You shouldn't have drafted Mark Andrews. There's no way of knowing. He'll get better. I'm not panicking. Fantasy and Dynasty, Amari Cooper or Cooper Kupp. I will take Cooper Kupp in both instances because they're both. I think Cooper Kupp's production is going to outweigh Amari Cooper's productions. So in Dynasty, because they're similarly aged, Kupp is a little bit older, but because they're similarly aged, I will lean into the production more of Cooper Kupp. Dude, I totally missed. Dude, I hate the StreamYard does not show you the super chats at the top anymore. It's really annoying. So here for the memes, I'm so sorry. I'm like 15 minutes late to this party. But thank you so much for the super chat, and thank you for joining again, my man. If we have likely, are we trading or holding? I will hold as of right now. Because I think that 8 for 100 and a touchdown, almost 2 touchdowns, is obviously not going to happen every single week. But I think that there is enough here to make me say that Isaiah Likely is he's going to be a thing this year. Now in Dynasty, I mean, if you could sell him for a first round pick, then obviously trade Isaiah Likely for a first. But I wouldn't sell him for a second right now. I would hold on to Isaiah Likely because I think that he has a production to be an every week starter. And if Mark Andrews were to ever miss, then I think that those weeks would be even better. It's kind of like he's like the David Montgomery right now of like the tight end position. I think that he's good as an every week starter when the other starter is also healthy. But should the other starter ever miss games, then he's going to have a fantastic opportunity. So, uh, yeah, I think that I wouldn't be actively trying to sell Isaiah Likely, like I said, unless you get a first round pick. Tank Dell or Mostert this week. I will play Raheem Mostert. I really like the matchup against the Jaguars. I think that whole entire game is going to be a shootout, so it's going to be really, really fun. So I'll play Raheem Mostert this week. Uh, yeah, 12 team, half PPR, one quarterback. Hurts. Thoughts? I have decent running back depth and got a stud wide receiver after you traded Achane and Smith for Amon-Ra and Ray Davis. I will always say yes to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Love Ray Davis as well. It might have been a slight overpay. Slightly. It depends on what Achane does. If Achane breaks out, this could be an overpay, but I'm still not hurt by it. But maybe you missed out on like an extra second round pick of value. It could have been Achane and Smith for Amon-Ra, Ray Davis, and a second. But at the end of the day, you still upgraded and got Amon-Ra St. Brown, so I don't mind it at all. I like it. Who has no running backs of note outside of Jordan Mason. Is he a guy that could be a starter down the road, or do I like to try and sell him for any value if I can if CMC goes down? Is this as a rebuilder? I'm as a reminder as a rebuilder. Then yes, I would sell him for anything that you can. I don't think that he is a starter. At any point down the road. So if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt as a rebuilder, I would sell Jordan Mason as soon as possible when he becomes a starter. It's kind of like maybe he does enough as a starter that he can be as a starter for Christian McCaffrey filling in for CMC that he goes and signs somewhere else to be a starter. But I don't think Jordan Mason is good enough to be a starter anywhere else. It's kind of like the whole Mike Davis thing. Like Mike Davis did so well in Carolina filling in for CMC that he went and got a job as a starter for the Falcons and then did nothing and lost out his job to Cordero Patterson. So being able to sell off of Jordan Mason, I think, would be fantastic, especially as a rebuilder if CMC were to get hurt. And I would dangle him out for a pretty penny, not just to the guy that lost CMC, but to anybody that wants the RB1 upside of Jordan Mason in that offense without CMC. Not to say that you should be getting a first, but you should be getting more than just like a random second at that point should CMC miss time. Especially if it's a multi-week thing. You probably if CMC gets hurt and he misses like one game, then you probably should just sell for a second at that point. But if CMC goes down and he's on IR and he's out for 6, 7, 8 weeks, that is a massive amount of the season that you should be able to sell Jordan Mason for more than a second at that point. Should I drop A.T. Perry for Justice Hill on waivers? Reports state A.T. Perry could be very busy this year. I would take Justice Hill. I'd rather just have the running back over the wide receiver just in general for depth. But I don't. I think A.T. Perry is fine, but I don't think Derek Carr is good enough to support multiple assets. So I think that A.T. Perry is just kind of there, So I'd rather have Justice Hill. As a rebuilder, should I look to sell Rice now or keep him as a building block? I would keep him as a building block, unless you could flip him for something that's phenomenal. But I would keep him now. I wouldn't sell him for just picks. I would need to be moving over to another. It's similar to the Xavier Worthy thing where I need to be, in order to sell high off of Rashee Rice, I need to be in a upper echelon of wide receivers that I was previously not able to get with Rashee Rice, which is a lot of wide receivers, to be fair, given where Rashee Rice's price was prior to last night. But I think that he's a top 15 guy. So I need to be able to flip Rice for Garrett Wilson or Puka or Malik Neighbors, somebody like that with Rice now, not like sell Rice for Waddle or Ayuk or anybody like that. Like, so I think that Rice is already in that range, and it doesn't really do anything for you to just sell one for one from that regard. And I wouldn't sell him for picks either. I would keep him as a building block. I think he's going to be fantastic. I think he is the Chiefs' Amon-Ra St. Brown. Sorry if this was addressed. It's all right. I had to hop out of the live 12 team. Yeah, this wasn't enough for T. Higgins. So I don't think T. Higgins was big enough of an upgrade over George Pickens. So I would keep Ford and Pickens. Is it worth dropping Tillman or Whittington for Noah Fant or Jonnu Smith? Have Trey McBride but nobody else, currently a young team, and have a stockpile of wide receivers? I would drop Cedric Tillman in a heartbeat. I would hold on to Whittington. I think that he is a solid back-end stash. Now, between Fant or Jonnu, who would I pick up? I stared into my light for too long. Bless me. Between Fant or Jonnu, who would I rather pick up? Paulson has Jonnu ranked as a tight end 14 this week. That's not really saying much considering all the other tight ends that he's ahead of, including Noah Fant. Fant's down here at tight end 23. Yeah, I would pick up Jonnu. There's a lot of noise about Jonnu right now playing this like F position or whatever it is. And McDaniel trying to get him the ball more than he has previous tight ends. So he's not really like a tight end, I think. Or I don't think McDaniel is viewing him as a tight end. So it's kind of like, might be like he might be like how he was back in Tennessee, where he was just kind of like this interesting little like movable asset, athlete more or less than tight end. So I think I would pick up Jonnu Smith. I would drop Tillman for Jonnu Smith. Imagine when Mahomes throws 45 to 50 times. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. He threw 28 times. And Rice still had 9 targets. But yeah, throwing more would be good for Worthy and good for Kelsey and good for Hollywood when he's back too. If you like this amazing content, which we all do, smash the like button. Thank you so much, my man, Jamie. Thank you. Dotson over 14.5 yards. That's what we're looking at tonight. Whew. I don't know. That's pretty juicy. I don't know if he's ready for that kind of stuff. Worthy in a second for Nico. Thanks again. Yeah, I would take Nico for that. BTJ, Palmer, or Keon Coleman. Pick 2. I would go Palmer and BTJ. I'm not ready to start Keon Coleman just yet. BTJ and Palmer. There we go. I believe Ramsey will be on Gabe this week, so BTJ is a great option. That's hoping for. K-Mac, yo, what's up, my man? Logan, 12-team, 1 quarterback, half PPR, traded Pickens and the 209 for Worthy and a 25 mid-first. I am a contender right now. Would you try to upgrade from Worthy or hope he keeps up the form? I would keep Worthy. There's no reason to trade Worthy right now unless you're able to sell him for a lot higher than what he should be. There's no reason to sell him right now. Warren for BTJ and a redraft. My love for Brian Thomas Jr. I feel like this is roster dependent, depending on which position you need more. I lean towards BTJ in a vacuum, but if you need the running backs, I don't mind Jaylen Warren either. That's what I was hoping to hear. Figured you'd like it. Also traded your boy Zamir for a second. Nice. Excellent. Weiberg, we need more likes on this live stream. Yes, we do. Thank you so much. Thank you for the support. Team feels so much safer while still ready to compete. That's the name of the game, my man. Shifting away from risk, allocating your assets over to safer positions and safer players. It's just like stocks and retirement and finances, but we're just doing it on a fantasy football level. Is likely worth most of my fab for dynasty leagues. My tight ends are the best with Hunter Henry, Freiermuth, and Parkinson. Yeah, you spend everything. Drop all of it. All of it. All 100%. Genji agrees 100%. I am so aggressive on dynasty waiver wires that when I see players that are available that should not be available, first of all, probably should not have been available in your dynasty leagues coming into last night. Then doing what he did last night anyway, he is worth 100% of your fab. Drop all of it. Like the stream, y'all. Appreciate you, Addison. Thank you so much, Ja. BJ has a 1 quarterback start, 9-12 team. So many wide receivers. Thoughts on what I should do? Higgins. Also, Luke McCaffrey. Can't forget about Luke McCaffrey. I am moving Judy, Gabe Davis, Dobbs. You have 2 Dobbs share. Interesting. No, I'm just kidding. I'm moving Judy, Gabe Davis, Dobbs for handcuff running backs. Shaheed could also possibly be expendable, but I think you could see what Shaheed can do. Persol, you just got to hold on to. Throw him on IR if you have one. Just hold on to him. I have 2-for-1s. I would do 2-for-1s, man. I'd be 2-for-1ing the crap out of Olave and Flowers. I feel like you could get Amon-Ra or Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb with Olave and Flowers, I think, right now. If you could do that, that'd be insane. So then you'd have one of those guys in Higgins and Odunze and Puka. Yeah, that's what I would do. Then trade all your extra depth for handcuffs. That would be how I'd go. Genji is we're wired in today, Genji. Peter, football is back. Yes, it is. If T misses with the hammy, who would you start? Deontay, Rome, or Josh Palmer? Would you consider one of the others if T plays anyway? Love him, but a tale as old as time. Beauty and the... I would start... Of those 3, I would start Deontay Johnson tonight. Not tonight. I keep saying tonight. This week. I would start Deontay Johnson this week if T. Higgins doesn't play. If Higgins plays... Honestly, I think I still play Deontay anyway, even if T. Higgins plays, because I think it really is so annoying. I was so high on T. Higgins coming in, not like so high, but I was just like, dude, he's got to have a bounce back year. And then he goes and tweaks his hamstring anyway. If we have the same freaking issue again this year as we did last year, it's going to be so annoying. Deontay was dealing with his own injury stuff, and of course, he himself has injury issues. I don't trust Rome in my starting lineup yet. I want to see what goes on. Palmer, I like, but I would not play Palmer over Deontay Johnson. I would play Deontay with T. Higgins out, and I'd probably play Deontay even if T. Higgins is playing. Would you start Jamison Williams or Khalil Shakir? I would start Khalil Shakir. Hold on, let me vet with Paulson. Scrolling. He has Khalil Shakir ranked wide receiver 53, projected 10 fantasy points. He has Jamison Williams. Oh, is JMO higher? Oh, he has JMO at wide receiver 45 with 11 fantasy points. So there's a 1 point difference between the two. He does have Jamison Williams ranked higher. Oh, wait. This is in a full PPR. Hold on. Let me switch you over to a half PPR. He has Jamison Williams projected for 9.3 half PPR fantasy points. He's got Khalil Shakir ranked for 8.2. So again, the same point. One point difference between the two. I think I would start. Oh man, the Lions though, with their shootout matchup against the Rams. Okay, I'm in. I'll start Jamison Williams. I'll start him this week because I think that the Bills handle the Cardinals pretty easily at home. So I don't know how much work Khalil Shakir is going to get. So I will swing for the fences with James. Not necessarily swing for the fences, but I feel like I would start Jamison Williams. I'm in. We worked our way over to the answer. Started Rashid, have Ayuk, Metcalf, McLaurin locked in. Would you start Jaden Reed over any of them? No, I don't think so. I would not start Reed over Ayuk or Metcalf. McLaurin is interesting, but as the only wide receiver really on the Commanders, Bucks defense. I do like Jaden Reed tonight. I do agree with that. I don't hate him. I feel like I would probably still play McLaurin though. I think Christian Watson's going to have a good night. That's my feeling today. So I think I would start McLaurin anyway. I'm still gonna. I'll start McLaurin. Final answer. Chase and Spears for Puka, Walker, and a 25-second, which side in a standard scoring Dynasty 12. I will take Puka, Walker in the second. That's a big time upgrade. I think going down from Chase to Puka in a second, I think makes sense. But then you get the big time upgrade from Spears to Walker. So I'll take Puka, Walker in the second. Josh Downs officially ruled out week 1. All of the Michael Pittman. Trade JSN, Keon, Vidal, 25-second, 26-third for Higgins, Gibson, and Kenneth Walker. And now you hate T. Higgins. But I think that this is a win, though. Jason and Higgins, I feel like you can effectively cancel out, but I would rather have Kenneth Walker than all of the rest of it. And you got a free Antonio Gibson. So I like it ultimately, even with the whole Higgins hamstring stuff. Look at this 1 week at Addison AMA and already making great moves. Look at that. Appreciate you, Christian. Happy Friday, Nick. I'm a contending 1 quarterback 12-team Dynasty League. I was offered Njoku. I give Jerome Ford. I've got decent depth at running back, Walker, Mixon, but only have Kyle Pitts. Interesting. I have a counter offer of trading Zamir White for Njoku plus. Do you think you can add? Yeah, Nick. Christian already knows. You might be able. The reason why he might be aiming for Jerome Ford is because he might see him as a cheaper option. That he can just spot fill for the first couple of weeks while Nick Chubb is out. But if you dangle Zamir, if you say, hey, Zamir White is actually available, but you can add something to Njoku, I would rather do that. I'd rather trade Zamir White for I would trade Zamir for Njoku straight up. But I think you have a better likelihood of getting something on top of Njoku for Zamir White. Is how I would go about it. Yep. Traded Jermaine Burton in a 25-second for a first. That's nutty work, dude. That's insane. Jonathan, would you trade Ladd Lawrence a 25-second for a lot of Ken Walker deals today? For Ken Walker and Dak in a 1 quarterback league. Not sure I want to acquire Dak. Need running backs, though. Yes, I would do this. I would trade Ladd in a 25-second for Kenneth Walker. And I think Dak is an upgrade over Trevor Lawrence. And that doesn't necessarily matter all that much in a 1 quarterback league. Like, they're close enough that I don't think it really matters. But I would take Kenneth Walker over Ladd in 25 seconds. So, yes, I would do this deal. And I wouldn't feel bad about acquiring Dak Prescott. He's like 30 years old, so he's not really old. And I think Dak outproduces Trevor Lawrence anyway. He's going to throw like 700 times this year. It's going to be insane. Would you rather have Brian Robinson or Tyjae Spears in a 10-team dynasty? Value is on the Tyjae Spears side. I think Brian Robinson is better than what people are thinking that he is. And I think he has a quicker path to more volume and workhorse volume. But I think the values on the I would love to get Brian Robinson plus something for Tyjae Spears. It doesn't even have to be a second. It could be, it could be a couple of thirds or an upside. Like if you have like a Josh Palmer kind of player or Dontavian Wicks kind of player, something on top of Brian Robinson to trade off of Tyjae Spears. And if you have Brian Robinson, I don't think I would flip him for Spears 1-for-1. That's kind of how I would approach this. Traded for Rashee Rice on Wednesday. Godwin in a 25 first for Rice in a 25 second and a third. I freaking love this so much, dude. This is phenomenal. This is yes. I love this so much. Well done. There we go. Start Terry McLaurin this week versus Jamal Dean. There we go. You can only start three of Metcalf, Olave, Evans, and Devo. Is Olave the guy this week? Is Olave the guy out this week? Yeah, I'm definitely starting Evans. I'd probably trust in Olave or trust in Devo. I was looking right at Deebo Samuel's name and I said Olave. Evans is a lock. I would trust Deebo. Metcalf or Olave? Olave gets the Panthers. Metcalf gets the Broncos. Is Metcalf gonna get PS2 though? Paulson would agree with Metcalf. Paulson has Metcalf a full point over Olave as the wide receiver 14. Olave is the wide receiver 23. And he also does have he's got Debo ahead too. Yeah, I think Olave gets the boot this week. Sad to say. The Panthers defense, or at least the Panthers secondary, was like surprisingly good last year to end the year. And so I'm wondering if that continues again this year. And if that's the case, this might not be good for. I don't think this Saints Panthers game is going to be all that great. I think it's going to be kind of gross. So yeah, Evans, Debo, Metcalf, Olave gets the boot this week. Jacob, this is a tough one, but what is a player pick that would get the upgrade from Devonta Smith to Jamar Chase? Would a first and Smith be enough? Great question. I think a first and Devonta Smith might be enough. That's probably like a 50-50 shot depending on the person who has Jamar Chase and his value. Devonta, I'm on the DLF trade analyzer just throwing stuff out. I have to log in. Water. Stay hydrated, folks. Especially when you're talking for 2 hours straight. Future first. So the analyzer says that that's not enough. I feel like it's very dependent. Maybe it's not 50-50. Maybe in like 30% of cases, you could trade Devonta Smith in a first for Jamar Chase. To add on top of it, though, they're suggesting a player like Alvin Kamara, Stephon Diggs, George Kittle, Deontay Johnson, Trey Benson, someone in that kind of range. Of which, like, if you could trade, I don't know if you have Diggs, but if you could trade Smith, Diggs, and a 25 first for Jamar Chase, I would definitely do that. It just kind of depends on what else you have on your roster to see. Like, if you want to throw your roster out, we could try to see what we could add on to Jamar Chase. Hubbard or Harris in a half PPR. I will take Najee. Again, that kind of goes back to, I just think that that this week for the Panthers and the Saints are just disgusting. This is half PPR, so I'm going to vet against Paulson's rankings. Paulson has Chuba ahead, but it's by a full point. Very interesting. He's got them both projected for the same number of rush attempts. He does have Chuba in as potential events. He has Chuba as a slightly higher likelihood of scoring, so that's really where the difference comes from. I think I would go with Najee Harris. But I wouldn't fault you for playing Chuba if you find a really good reason to play Chuba. This is why I wish that Paulson was here so he could like talk about it. The one benefit for Chuba is that he doesn't really have anybody to compete with, whereas Najee's going to have Jaylen Warren to compete with. So maybe use that as a reason to start Chuba Hubbard, that he has a higher opportunity share of the backfield than Najee does. So I'm in on that if we go for it. I'll play Chuba. I'm with it. JP, did we already discuss the Andrews likely situation? If so, I'll rewind. Yeah, I mentioned it a couple times. TLDR, I'm not panicking on Mark Andrews right now. Andy Holloway had a fantastic breakdown on Twitter of what he saw that was going on with Mark Andrews, that the Chiefs were bottling him up. Likely just ended up being a beneficiary of it. But I do think that Isaiah Likely, because the Ravens are going to run primarily 12 personnel, that Likely is here to stay. And that he is probably going to end up being a very startable tight end every single week. So that's the short version of it. I mentioned it. It was probably, I think it was about 10 minutes in at the very beginning as I gave my very long breakdown. And then I mentioned it probably a couple other times. But if you go back to the beginning of the show, I think it was around 10 minutes. You'll see the comment pop up. So just look for the Andrew's likely comment that pops up. And I have my that's my big breakdown to the very beginning of what we were talking about. Jamar Chase believes today is a deadline in his mind to get a deal done, believes the two sides are in a reach of a deal, will likely be limited on Sunday if he plays, calls himself a game time decision. That's Jamar Chase. Interesting. Sorry, I'm getting on the new Bleacher Nation fantasy app. Make sure that you go download that as well. DeAndre Hopkins is officially questionable. Very interesting. All right. Genji got offered Tajay a second and a third for Flowers and Worthy. Got rejected. You offered that for Flowers and Worthy. Got rejected. Yeah, that's not enough. I don't even think that's enough for either one of them individually. Which wide? Oh, for Flowers and okay. So you offered it for both of them. Which wide receiver realistically can I get for that offer? Probably somebody who hasn't played yet, to be honest with you. Pickens, JSN. Maybe you can get DK. Maybe. You're not far off. You're in that range. That's probably where you're at with one of those guys. I don't think you get up to like Pittman and Odunze and Debo and Devonta Smith, DJ Moore. I think you're in that. I think Pickens or Tank Dell maybe. DK is in that range. Will be. I traded a first and third for Rashee Rice yesterday before the game started. Which side do you like? I love the Rashee Rice side. Fantastic. People trash KTC, but I think it's a great baseline for trades. What do you think? I think that KTC is bad. My issue with KTC for trades is that I feel like they don't properly weight multi-player deals on both sides, especially like when you do like 2-for-1s or 3-for-1s. I feel like those are like very, very wrong. I also just don't. I also just don't agree with like KTC's rankings mostly in general. And I find that they are not really indicative of the leagues, of the player values of the leagues that I play in. Not to say that they're not indicative of the leagues that you play in. That's just my experience with it. But yeah, I feel like their trade calculator is just not good. And I just really don't like that a lot of people just rely on it so much to make all of their trade decisions. Which if you know who those league mates are, you know, you could try to take advantage of it. But I just feel like that there is really nothing on there. Like 1-for-1 trades, I think are fine. It's really when you get to like some 2-for-1s I found have been weird. Some 3-for-1s are weird. 3-for-2s are weird. There's just some of the values on there with the way that they add value on each side. It just feels like it's overweighting compilation and isn't accurately deducting value from the from like the massively packaged side versus the other side. So yeah, I just in general, I have not personally found KTC to be a good resource, but I know a lot of people really use it. To where that you could take advantage of it. But for me personally, I just find that KTC is not all that helpful. Is there a better trade calc that you found? Well, nah, but I think Dynasty trade calculator. I think DTC works really, really well. I've found that their values align very nicely and they're updated well with current rankings. So they're the one that I lean more towards. I think Dynasty Daddy has a pretty. They have a trade calculator, right? They have a lot of different tools. They just have the trade database. I don't think they have a calculator, do they? Oh, they do have a trade calculator. Let's see. Let's check it out because I haven't really played with this one. I knew that they have a lot of good tools and stuff. Here, let's compare. I'm going to use the Tyjae Spears trade from Genji. Tyjae Spears, 2025. We'll call it a mid-second and a, what was it, a third? Yeah, 25 third. 25 third for, we'll put in Flowers. Yeah, overweight. We need to add a player of the caliber of Roshan Johnson to make that deal fair. Now on the Dynasty Daddy side, sorry, this is just me like for the first time messing around with the Dynasty Daddy calculator live on this AMA. This is fantastic for everybody watching. Now, the Dynasty Daddy calculator has this as a fair trade, actually slightly in favor of the Spears mid-second and a mid-third. Very interesting. Oh, because they're doing it based on the keep trade cut market. Okay. If we switch to ADP, no, I don't like that one. Dynasty process. So Dynasty process has this. It depends on which fantasy market you use. Apparently, interesting. I don't like that at all. I don't like that. Interesting. So maybe KTC isn't as bad. Oh wait, sorry. KTC has the Flowers trade. It's they have the Spears trade side winning of that one. Spears versus Flowers. Interesting. It has both KTC and Dynasty Daddy using the KTC market has the Zay Flowers side losing to Spears a second and a third. Dynasty Daddy lets you pick. Yeah, that's what I was messing around with. I don't know if I like some of them. I wish that they had like an aggregate pool. Because I don't know if the ADP Daddy. I don't know if I like that. It says from 198,000 real drafts. I mean, maybe I just don't understand what the process is, like how the math behind it works. Because I understand how the math for the DLF one works. So maybe that's just why it makes more sense to me. Interesting. But he wanted Worthy too. Oh, so you did want both of them. Okay. Yeah, then that's definitely not fair. I had originally thought that, and then I thought that, yeah, you sent that offer to two different owners for two different players. That is what I believed was actually the case. So both calculators say that the Tyjae Spears side would win over Flowers, and I think it would probably win over Worthy as well. Sorry, that's just we went off on a tangent there. Yan Baggy flexing a one quarterback, Jacoby Myers or J.K. Dobbins. I will take Jacoby Myers. I just trust him a little bit more than I do Dobbins. I want to see what this Chargers backfield looks like. I was looking to possibly trade Chase and like Smith. Here's our, oh, you have Chase. Okay. So having Chase, I would need a lot more than a first to trade away Jamar Chase. I don't even. Can I ask why you're looking at trading Jamar Chase with this roster anyway? This roster is insane, and Jamar Chase is your wide receiver 3. I would need a lot more than Devonta Smith in a first. Like I would need Devonta Smith in like 2 firsts to trade off of Jamar Chase. You lack running back depth, super top heavy. Yeah, but running back depth you can find and it comes and goes and like I feel like depth is I feel like a lot of managers really overweight and overvalue depth. And for some reason, I find a lot of people really like to mortgage their best players to create depth. And maybe that's just because they're the easiest to move for multiple parts, but also then you're losing one of your best players. So like I would like to find different ways to get depth that doesn't involve using my best players. It's really I think my issue with a lot of trades that happen like that. Colby 12 team zero flex PPR big trade. Which side? Knicks Chase in a 25-second or Stroud and BTJ? I will take Stroud and BTJ. It's pretty close though, but I value the elite quarterback here, and my BTJ love is going to come out for a little bit. So I will take Stroud and BTJ on that one. Ayuk or Rice straight up. Oh man, they're in the same tier for me as of right now. I lean towards whichever side you had already. I would not do this deal on either side just to trade one for one. That's my final answer. For what would you sell Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones, the strongest team in my 8-team, 2-quarterback plus Superflex league wants to trade for one of them? All right, interesting. So you can start 3 quarterbacks, but it's only 8-team. A second? I mean, if you can sell a first, that'd be phenomenal. But I don't think you can get a first for either one of them, even in an 8-team. But I would take a second, especially it's probably a contender second, but like a contender second is still guaranteed to be in a 12-team league that's 204 or better because that's pick 16 or earlier. So if it's a contender second, it's probably like pick maybe 14, 15, 16, which in a 12-team league would be 202, 203, 204. Superflex. So I would trade either one of them for a second. I'll take a second. You're hoping to bundle them with Pittman for a wide receiver upgrade, or do that. I would effectively treat both of them as just like a second round pick. And if you can use them to add to Pittman and go up and get Nico or Garrett Wilson or Puka or somebody like that would be phenomenal. That'd be insane. I think you can get into the Nico range. Don't know if you can get into Wilson or Puka. But you can probably get to Nico, maybe Neighbors. I don't know who the other guy has. But yeah, I would try to do that. Tajay in a 25-second for Jaden Reed. I would take Reed there. Steven traded Gibbs, Downs in a third for Waddle, Walker, and a 25 first this offseason. Yeah. I don't know why my brain's like not working to make this make sense for me, but I love this actually. I would like, so you traded down from Gibbs to Walker and you added Waddle in order to do that. That's phenomenal. And then you traded and then you traded Downs in a third for a 25 first. Yeah, that's a fantastic trade, dude. This is amazing. Yeah, I like this a lot. Way to go, Steven. Thing for Chase is if Burrow or Chase himself gets hurt this year, Chase goes down in value. If they both play and does what he did rookie year, could be wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, injuries to other wide receiver 5 to 10. I mean, I get that, but I also like maybe moving down to Devonta Smith is too far. Maybe you need to identify somebody who has, like, if you're looking for running back depth, can you identify somebody who has David Montgomery or Brian Robinson or I'm trying to think of some other running backs, but like that, what I would do is I would try to find who is a good running back that you want to acquire as like your RB3 to go with. You had Achan and Gibbs and Achan and Henry and Spears. So I mean, you're not like hurting for running back depth, but if you wanted to add in another player that's like a Tyjae Spears, so for me that would be David Montgomery or Brian Robinson, or maybe it's like Ramondre Stevenson or Javonte Williams or somebody like that. Identify who those teams are in your league that has those players. Figure out which wide receivers they have, and maybe it works out to where you trade Chase for Puka and Javonte. And then so then you kind of tear down, but then you also address some of your running back need, but you're not really tearing down all that much. Like I feel like going from Chase to Devonta Smith or anybody in that Devonta Smith range is a massive trade down that I think is harder to convince them to take on Jamar Chase for that big of a package. They don't want to pay up for that. And I think it's also harder to find players that fit the puzzle to make that deal work that makes sense on your end to address depth or an extra starting spot or something, like especially in the name of depth. Like you're so top heavy that I think that you need to make a micro trade down to just gain another RB3, RB4, RB5 instead of doing some big massive tear down from Chase to Smith or Chase to Odunze or Michael Pittman or DK Metcalf or somebody like that. Like I would be looking at who has Puka, who has Marv, who has Garrett Wilson, um, and I would see which running backs that they have to see if you can make that puzzle piece work. Cuddy forever 12 team start 12 tier off of Josh Allen and a 25 first for Caleb and Olave. I'm taking Josh Allen in this mostly because I don't really believe in Chris Olave. But I think this is a pretty easy way to get, and you got a second on top of it. I would take Josh Allen over Caleb and Olave straight up, let alone that's a free second. So yeah, I'm keeping Josh Allen. What would you need to see tonight to make sense of the Packers receivers mess? I would need to see what I'm hoping for is that two of them come out on top and are like clear favorites, or that they're operating at all levels of the field, at all areas of the field in terms of between the 20s into the red zone. They're out there in 11 personnel and 12 personnel. What I'm hoping for tonight is clarity in the Packers wide receiver room from an opportunity and role standpoint. Is kind of what I'm hoping for. I think it's going to end up being Watson and Reed are the two. They really like Romeo Dobbs as well. So it might just be a weird three-headed. And then Dontavian Wicks seems like he's like the odd man out, or at least he has been for most of training camp and preseason. And kind of was last year. It just was like he did well with Watson out. But with Watson healthy, what does it look like? I don't know if we're going to get clarity tonight, but I'm hoping that we at least get two of them. We can have some confidence in two of these guys, and then maybe the third is rotational. Here's maybe a question you haven't been asked right now. What are your projections for the top 5 dynasty wide receivers next year? If you were to guess right now, excellent question. Jefferson, Lamb, Amon-Ra, Chase, and Marvin Harrison. Which that's essentially the top 5 right now. But I feel like now to spin this around, the player that I believe has the highest odds to get bounced of those top 5 is Jamar Chase. So I agree with you on that. And then after the fact, then it would probably be Garrett Wilson if he does break out this year. But then we're going to have the conversation of what happens with him post Aaron Rodgers. We'll have to see with all that. Neighbors, I could see enter that conversation. Puka, I could see enter that conversation if he really performs well with Cooper Kupp, like what he was doing last year. We'll have similar, like what happens after Matthew Stafford, but he is slightly younger than Garrett Wilson, didn't come off of an Achilles. So, or Stafford is slightly younger than Aaron Rodgers. Sorry. So we'll see with that. But I think that Jefferson, Lamb, and Amon-Ra are locks. I think that those three are boom. I think Marv is pretty much next in lock, and I think Chase is mostly a lock as long as he produces. Doesn't have to return to 2021 form, but if he goes out there and puts up 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns, I think that he's more than fine as a top 5 guy. Then as for running back, Bijan, Brees, Gibbs, I feel like those guys are locked still just because of age and production. I think Achan has a bid. I think JT still has a bid. But I really think that Jonathan Brooks has the ability to be a top 5 dynasty running back this time next year if he overtakes Chuba Hubbard quickly and produces well over the second half of the season. Because then next year we're going to be looking at year 2 post ACL, year 2 in the NFL. Um, Good offensive system in the Dave Canales offense that did really well for Kenneth Walker, did really well for Rashad White. Hopefully Bryce Young took a step forward this year. That's where I think, and he's also like Brooks is also just a lot younger than a lot of the other running backs. Like he's like 4 or 5 years younger than JT, younger than ETN, younger than Saquon by a lot, younger than Christian McCaffrey by a lot. Like I could just see the age argument getting kicked up for Brooks as well, kind of like what we did with Dobbins and Javonte Williams. But I think the top 3 are locked. I think Achan can get in there. I think JT still has a bid. I would like to see Brooks in there, but I feel like that's kind of it. I don't think ETN will get up into that range. Saquon won't. I think Christian McCaffrey gets bounced because then he'll be 28 next year. So it's that's an age argument for CMC. So that's how I feel about the running back position. Watson or Eckler to start in your flex. I will start Christian Watson tonight in my flex. I'm not a huge Austin Eckler fan. Sent Olave and a second for Javonte, Singletary, and a first. Yeah, this is your hard to buy running back league. Man, I don't know if I would have done this. The first is nice, but you had to add a second on top. I wish you didn't have to add that second. I mean, it doesn't really hurt your wide receiver room. But I don't know. I think I would have just kept Olave and try to just figure something out, especially because this is a very similar argument. This is another depth thing. Because you're never going to start any running back over Christian McCaffrey or JT except for during bye weeks or in case one of them gets hurt. But you have Chase, Puka, Waddle. You had Olave. You had Amari as your wide receiver 5. I just don't know if I would have ultimately ended up making this move, even with running backs being hard to buy. Because it's a depth thing. And I think I would have definitely preferred not to have added the second. So yeah. I'm sorry. I know that running backs are hard to get in here. Trade away Javonte for Nico. I would take Nico Collins. This reverses that trade. 100% reverses it. I understand because it's a standard league, a non-PPR league. I would still take Nico Collins. I'm still taking Nico in this. And now what about kicker? Any crystal ball visions on how the Brown versus Moss split will shake out in Cincy? Short term, this is a start sit question. Long term, this will be how to value them in trades. I think Zach Moss is the leader. I think that he is like a 60-40 winner in this. I don't know if Chase Brown is ultimately good enough to win out the starting job on his own. So it will take an injury to Zach Moss to get him to be over the 50% split share, I think. So I would start Zach Moss between the two this week and for the foreseeable future, unless something drastic changes. And I would value Zach Moss more in trades than Chase Brown. I think they're both worthy of a second, but I think Moss is worthy of like 2 seconds or like a second and a third. Whereas I wouldn't really pay that for Brown. Brown is closer to just paying a 2/3 than he is 2 seconds. So that's how I think that's what I think is going to shake out in Cincy for both of them. Give Kyler and a 25 first for Josh Allen. Projected early 25 first. Dude, your teams are so insane, man. Your teams are absolutely wild. No, I would keep Kyler in the first, especially if that is a projected early first. That early first is a really good way to recoup some age at the I kicked something. Recoup some age at the running back or wide receiver position next year. If you could potentially get that could, I mean, God forbid it's like Luther Burden or Ted McMillan, but even if you get like Evan Stewart or the RB1 next year, whoever that ends up being. That's a good way, I think, to kind of hit reset on your running backs because you're getting old with CMC, Kamara, and Eckler. So Bijan and whoever that other rookie running back next year could be would be a great way to continue your longevity. Same kind of with the wide receiver position where you could have another wide receiver kind of waiting in the wings to take over for Tyreek Hill. So I would keep Kyler in the 25 first. I got a Dak CD stack, but they play Cleveland. So should I pass up the stack and start Goff versus the Rams? Whew. I'm starting Goff. Goff and CD Lamb. I'm starting Goff over Dak Prescott this week. Yep. Yeah. Dude, that Lions Rams game might be absolutely insane. And with the fact that it is it's at home, right? I was trying to find. Yeah, they're in Detroit. Yeah. I'm starting Jared Goff. You're absolutely playing CD. There's no question about that. But I'll start Jared Goff over Dak Prescott. All right. Nearly 2 hours of this. This is my expectation for how the next few start sits are going or AMAs are going to go with all the start sit questions now. I do kind of have a cutoff in a few minutes though. But 2 hours. That's how we go. So last call for any questions. If anybody's got any last minute start sits or anything like that, throw them out there. Appreciate that. I was worried a bit as well with Dak and agreed Lions Ram being a nice scoring one. Yeah. Yeah, I'll play Goff and CD Lamb. But that is it. So yeah, unless anybody has a buzzer beater, I will also let y'all know that if I didn't answer your question or you have follow-up questions or just more questions in general, that you can throw them in the comment section of this video after the fact. And I will be able to answer all of them like through the replay as if it was just a normal YouTube comment. I answer all the YouTube comments on the DLF side, so I will be able to answer those just over some text. So there's that. Najee or JSN this week? We went like almost 2 hours without having too many like overly difficult start sit decisions, and now we got right into here. What is that, a street cleaner? You guys able to, I don't know if you guys were able to hear that. It was like a street cleaner or something just went down my road. Najee or JSN full PPR? I don't know. Mike, hold on just 1 second. I'm looking up Paulson's rankings to help me with this. Does Chase sign his deal today? No, I don't think so. Kamara versus Carolina, Ingram versus Miami, DJ Moore versus Tennessee. I will 1.75. I'll start Kamara out of this one. Mike, Najee, or what is wrong with my mouse? Paulson has Najee ranked 57th overall in his flex rankings. So that is all non-quarterbacks. So 57th overall. And he has JSN ranked 85th. Okay. So that jived with my initial thought that I would start Najee Harris for the touch volume that he has. Both of them have really rough matchups. Denver's secondary is pretty good. And that game might just get out of hand from Denver to where it's just kind of like a rushing game for Seattle. So yeah, I think I start Najee Harris in this one. And Philip, I'll start Kamara. Addison, thank you for telling me not to trade Kyler and Rice for Hurts. You a dog. Got you, my man. I'm telling you, I had this feeling yesterday. I was like, dude, Rashee Rice is going to come out here and absolutely ball. He's going to remind everybody that he should be a top 15 Dynasty wide receiver, and he did absolutely that. How do we feel about Worthy in Dynasty? I don't feel really any differently about him than what I did going into last night. He is the exact same player that I thought he was. Highly explosive, going to score on some big touchdown plays. Did not get a lot of volume, so it's just kind of is what it is right now with Xavier Worthy. So, I talked about him a lot more throughout the show, just in general. I don't really have a timestamp for any of them. I'm not trying to sell high unless you can get into an echelon of receivers that you were previously not available, that were previously not available to get with Worthy. But I'm not selling him for picks. I'm not selling him for a first and second. It's just it doesn't make sense to sell Worthy right now, and I don't feel any differently about him than I did before last night. And then as for Kelsey, rest of season, I don't feel any differently about that either. I think that last night was just like he didn't look bad. He just didn't get as much volume because Mahomes only threw 28 times. So I think Kelsey's gonna be fine. I do think that the days of Travis Kelsey being a world-breaking tight end are definitely over. I mean, we probably felt that coming into the year anyway, but I don't think he's going to be as massively a difference-making tight end as he once was. As a top 5 guy, you're starting him every single week, absolutely. And Dynasty, though, I think it's an interesting conversation to move off of him for a Kincaid or for a Pitts or for, you know, add something to him to go up and get Laporta or McBride. I do think that that's a much more interesting conversation. But I don't feel less confident about Kelsey and his production the rest of the year now than I did before yesterday. So that's probably the way I would go about it. Mike Gonzalez, Jaden Reed, or T. Higgins on Sunday. I'm playing Jaden Reed tonight and not messing with the what ifs of T. Higgins. So I'll play Jaden Reed tonight against the beat up / potentially still not good Philly Eagles secondary. We'll see. We'll see what their Cooper DeJean and all that. We'll see how they do. Rookies though, first game. I'll play Jaden Reed tonight. All right. That will be it. I will cut us off at that point there. So like I said, if you have any more questions, follow-ups or anything like that, or if I didn't answer your question, then just throw it into the replay comments of this, and I will answer them just as if they were a normal YouTube comment, and we'll help you out from there. And yeah, so that is it. Appreciate all of you guys for hanging out for the past 2 hours. If you were here this whole entire time or just hanging out for as long as you possibly could today. Jamie, thanks so much for hanging out in the chat. Go check out Jamie does a Start Sit show. I think he has a Facebook group and stuff. Does a Start Sit show on Sunday. So Jamie, if you want to plug that again real quick, he helps you guys out on Sunday morning at 11:30 Eastern time, I believe is the show time. But yeah, so that is it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. Enjoy the football game tonight. Enjoy college football tomorrow. Enjoy the football on Sunday. Enjoy the Monday night game. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy if you guys live in a nice weather place. Enjoy the nice weather while we still have it as well. So have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you guys again next Friday, 12 Eastern time for another AMA. Peace.